President Assad, from my point of view, is a very good man. This man wants peace also. There are so many rumors that he doesn't want to solve the problem in the Middle East, or he doesn't want to reach a peace solution for his occupied territory. On the contrary, the man, I meet with him every now and then, he's very sincere in peace.
But why do we hear these almost conflicting things? I mean, he says he's for the peace, he won't stand in the way, he won't be an obstacle, and yet his public utterances each day are utterances that make you wonder. When he says, for example, that Israel is pursuing peace for peace sake, not peace for land. Israel is getting everything. The Arabs are getting nothing. Is he wrong?
Sometimes some heads of states, I'm not speaking about Hafez al-Assad or Rabin, he has to give some statements for local consumption everywhere in the world. So sometimes we have, whenever we want to deal with some problems, have to have in the back mind what are the needs of the people. Sometimes you cannot go quickly through a problem to be solved in a very short period of time. It may be a shock to the people. So you have to take it on a gradual basis. But my concept of President Hafez al-Assad, that he is sincere to reach peace.
In your own view, would you say that he is prepared, whether he says it or not, to open full diplomatic relations and have relatively free borders with Israel?
I could tell you he understands this very well, and he is keen on that. But just say it openly and so quickly to the people who are not used such diplomatic relation with Israel, who is staying for about over 40 years that Israel is an enemy. It needs preparing the people to accept such a new formula.
Well, did you encourage him to move more quickly, or do you think he's doing it the right way in terms of his...
We are encouraging him to move much more quickly now, and the man really is sincere, and I think he is moving in the right direction.
What do you think is at stake now if each country, Syria and Israel, don't move on these two tracks? Could their failure to take advantage of this momentum wreck the deal or make it more difficult?
No, I think if they didn't move with the Syrians, it will be a big problem.
Meaning?
A big problem.
In what way?
In the area. Even problem with the Palestinians, with the Arabs here. Because Syria, one considers one of the pivotal countries in the area. We have very good contacts with them, but to move on the Palestinian problem and to make it much more easier for the Palestinian problem to proceed forward, we have to solve also with the Syrians. Otherwise, after signing the accord in Washington, still a long way in for negotiating the Western Bank area. Still difficult, complicated, so it needs the support of the all Arab countries.
What can the U.S. do at this point, the United States, to nudge this process along? I mean, for example, would taking Syria off the terrorist list help, or inviting Assad to the United States, or what could it do vis-a-vis Israel? Is there any role for the U.S.?
Look, the U.S. have a very important role. We consider the United States as a full partner in the peace process. Without the help of the United States, I don't think that we could achieve or reach a comprehensive settlement. It's a very important element and a partner in the peace process. So I think the United States should urge and persuade the Syrians, the Israelis, to continue negotiating with the Syrians to put an end to the problem between Israel and Syria.
Would taking Syria off the terrorist list help? I mean, would that enable President Assad to say that, well, look, I've gotten this, and you know, would that be a sweetener?
I think this is one of the points which should be discussed between the United States and Syria. But believe me, I think whenever they reach a settlement to the problem of Golan and reach an agreement, the United States look after its decision that Syria is a terrorist country.
On the other hand, the thing that preoccupies the Israelis the most is security vis-a-vis the Golan. And you, I think, had proposed a compromise that there be a gradual withdrawal over a 4-month period. Is that kind of compromise the kind of thing you think the U.S. should be pushing?
I think the U.S. has to work on this point. And I think having multinational forces, even like the Egyptian front, we have multinational forces, may serve and make both sides feel secured.
As a buffer.
Yes, as a buffer zone,
And
as we did in Egypt.
And you're prepared to do that. Speaking of terrorism, how do you assess the capacity of groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran's terror factions that Iran supports to wreck this deal?
In Iran, they said that 500 million are prepared to be spent on this terroristic action, Hezbollah and this, and any problems in the persuading the so-called Islamic groups to create problems in this part of the world. So it's very clear that the Iran is doing that.
But do they have the capacity to wreck this deal?
No, they are trying, but I don't think that they could conclude something in that sense.
What has to happen in this process to have the peace process predominate over the terrorists? I mean, does, for example, the PLO have to quickly deliver something tangible in Gaza and in Jericho?
Number one issue, which is very important, which will make the people feel that is very important for them, what happened in Washington, is to raise the standard of living of the people. Economic reforms, helping these people to make the infrastructure there. So as the people could feel there is something after they agreed to sign the accord.
Mr. President, in that regard, Egypt itself is facing some tough economic challenges, violent challenges from radical groups within the society. How worried are you that resources and attention and everything else will be diverted to the Palestinians at Egypt's expense?
Look, I think the United States shouldn't, as far as I could evaluate, whenever it's looking after the Palestinian problem of financing the infrastructure there, it shouldn't reduce Egyptian aid now, because it's very important. We are on different programs, economic reforms, which will take another 2 to 3 years. I think the aid should stay as it is. I'm not asking to keep the aid forever. It's impossible. But until we finish all these reforms and be on the right track, I think we need the aid for some important reasons. The stability of this part of the world cannot be maintained without Egypt.
Why is that?
Because Egypt is the biggest country here, pivotal country in the area. So to have good economic reform, stability, without this, I don't think that it will be in the interest of the West or the United States that Egypt to be unstable. Peace without Egypt is impossible. War without Egypt in this area is impossible. So keeping or helping or supporting Egypt to be stable needs that this aid could continue for some time until we reach the end of our economic reform.
But some analysts of Egyptian affairs and Middle East affairs
In the United States.
in the United States,
American analysts.
have said that Egypt is on the edge, like Lebanon before 1975.
Is
that
on
the edge, that is about to fall off the cliff.
Yes.
That Egypt is the Achilles heel of the Middle East. Are they just seeing things wrong? I mean, is that not a fair assessment of Egypt's position?
Egypt is in better form now. We met difficulties, so many difficulties, 4 or 5 years ago. But we are going through economic reforms. We are dealing toughly and strictly according to the law with the terrorist group here in this country. I don't think that Egypt is on the edge at all.
Amnesty International says that you are violating international law by the way you are treating the people who are opposed to your regime, that people are being tortured, detained, tried before military authorities, even though they're civilians. My question is, are they just wrong about this?
I have to put it before a military court so as to finish it as quickly as possible, because the normal courts have lots of cases. It will take a very long time, which will make everything much more complicated.
So this
but
is
we are not
unfair.
violating the law or the Constitution under any circumstances.
Let me just change the subject slightly, Mr. President.
Yes.
You are facing an election next week. Let me ask you about that. You are unopposed, and presumably you will win and be president again. How does the future of democracy look here in Egypt as well as in the rest of the Arab world at this time?
We are very keen on democracy, but democracy for Egypt is about 12 years only, or 14 years. So don't expect that we'll have full democracy overnight. It needs generations. I'd like to tell you, the West, if it tries to push democracy in the countries of the third world countries who are not used to democracy at all, if you push it fast to reach the Western democracy, it may have a negative reaction. It may turn at the end to dictatorship. For example, having this open democracy in the West, some elements will use the atmosphere of democracy to throw away regimes and take over, which is very dangerous. So we have to, democracy should be taken on gradual basis until the people understand and swallow each step and digest it.
Well, Mr. President, thank you for giving so much of your time during this very busy period.
Welcome.